And this being so, both are united in the manifestation of anything the individual asks, creates by thinking. If the thinking on the part of the individual is lame, then the production must be the same, for in reality we are what we think. So we have seen already clearly that the universal self and the individual self are one. There can be no separation between them. And being so, both are united in the manifestation of anything the individual asks. The Father does the work. If the thinking part of the individual is lame, then the production must be the same, for we are what we think. The wonderful truth is this, that the individual is the means through which the infinite expresses himself. Being so, the individual becomes active first. Then the universal becomes active while the individual becomes passive, and the Father does the work. If you can realize what I am telling you, you will see the tremendous power that exists when you understand this. That in the first place, all is passive and quiet. The individual asks, that individual becomes active, while the universal is passive. Then immediately the individual asks or plants his seed, then the universal becomes active on that seed and reproduces its kind. Then the individual must become passive as the means of expression for the infinite to express himself through the individual. When you understand that, then you will know what faith means. The main factor is to discern that what we are really thinking, superficial thinking and discerning, is of little value, because the deeper strata is often the main source of our thought. For instance, you may think yourself superior to others, so much so it becomes a vice and not a virtue. The expression of the self is often made to cover up a deep feeling of inferiority in the self, with the result that the outer expression is but a form of compensation to the self, to enable a balance to be made in the outer. Yet it is the inner feeling that is really manifesting, and this is easily discerned to those who understand. That is why deep discernment is so necessary, otherwise you may be deluding yourselves. So in discerning your own thinking, it is not a superficial thing, whereby you have to eliminate most of the things that always are preventing or frustrating the expression of the infinite in man. When you are frustrated, it is by yourself and by no one else. And it is often done through this emotional conflict that is created in the mind through reaction to things external to oneself. This reaction is not pure thought at all, but it is very often the very opposite of pure thought. You're reacting to conditions and things. Let me tell you clearly then, and so that you will see in your own mind, that it is necessary for you to discern your thinking, to be aware of your emotions and the motives behind them, so that you can eliminate them. Then pure thinking comes as the mind is cleared of these things that hinders it. On the other hand, one may feel a sense of inferiority, and begins to express it by receding away from life. This is often caused by a false idea about the self, a causal remark by another, about a certain peculiarity that makes you feel different to others. Yet all this can be corrected by proper discernment and understanding of the self and the source of the self. Now you see plainly that to attain power you must think in the absolute and not in the relative, for the relative is conditioned. If you then feel that you are inferior or superior to others, you are thinking in the relative. You're reacting to things external to yourselves, and you're caught up in these things. Consequently, you are not free. But to think in the absolute means that you are free from the relative, which is the outside or the effects. When you understand this, the greatest power of all comes to you, because you see that the relative is effect, while behind the relative is the real, is the absolute. Everything has its beginning in the absolute. Everything has its roots in the absolute. There is nothing comes into existence except it has its roots in the absolute, and it has its beginnings in the absolute. It is perfect in the absolute. Always perfect, because that is a perfect substance and a perfect intelligence manifested. It is only when it becomes relative in the nature of mankind, when man sees things with two aspects, good and evil. But it says in the Bible clearly and distinctly, when God made the heavens and the earth, he saw that everything was good. The divine eye could see no evil, but human mind sees both, therefore is caught up in that double mind, the double-minded creature that cannot get anything from the Lord. So we see clearly and distinctly how everything has its roots in the absolute. The great thing in developing your faith is to take the idea out of the relative where it is restricted and transfer it to the absolute where it is not thus limited, and this includes everything belonging to the personal as well. Marvelous truth this is. It sometimes takes a little time for the individual to grasp it. But if you realize that your own roots are in the absolute, and this comes as a realization that you have to make yourselves, and as you make this realization, then you will see that there is neither time nor space, birth or death. These are things that exist only in the mind of man. But in God there is none. There is eternal existence now. No division, no time, no space. The right understanding of our mental world will enable us to do this by clearly defined method. In the first place, we must eliminate the idea of time and space from our actual self-existence. There is no time and space in the relative. There is time and space in the relative, but not in the absolute. So therefore, unless you can eliminate time and space out of your own self-existence, mind you, then you're caught up in the relative, which is time and space. You measure by relative things. You measure the time by the earth's revolution round the sun, because the earth revolves in its own axis at 1,000 miles an hour, and the earth is 24 hours in circumference. Therefore, it revolves one complete axis in 24 hours. You divide that into night and day, because one half of the earth is moving while the sun is shining upon it, and the other half of the earth is moving when the sun is shining on the other half. So therefore you have darkness on one half, light on the other, and you call that night and the other day. So as the earth revolves round the sun in 365 days, in a few minutes, to be correct. It travels at rate around the earth at this terrific speed. Therefore, it makes one complete circuit round the sun in 365 days, and you say that is 1 year. And because the sun is 93 million miles away from the earth, it moves in its own axis, controlled by the sun. Wonderful truth. Then you say this is 1 year. Then you begin the next year. Then you have your seasons. And you say this is summer, this is autumn, this is winter, this is spring. Why do you have autumn, winter, and spring and summer? Because of the fact that the earth is moving round the sun in that direction. And while it is that way, then you have summer in one part of the hemisphere, and it's still moving in that direction, all the time moving that way around the sun. Then when it's this way, it is on the other half of the hemisphere. Therefore you have the summer in one and the winter on the other. And you have on this side spring and autumn. And you say you measure time. That goes on incessantly. That is relative. But what is the cause of these things? That which is absolute and has no time nor space. In me is that which has no time and space. That is my self-existence. It is yours, but you must realize it yourselves to make it your own. Then you wonder how in the relative world you have all the mixture of the various things that come into your life. Yes, we see there are planets existing in this universe of ours. We can name them. We can name the sun as the controlling factor, the moon. Then you have Mercury, have Venus. You have the Earth, which is one way of living on. Then we have Mars. Then we have Jupiter. Then we have Saturn. Then we have Uranus. Then we have Neptune. And then we have Pluto. Now, little is known of Pluto. But you see, all these planets represent certain vibrations, life, of activity. Sun gives you spiritual understanding and growth because itself is the center of the universe. It gives you the spiritual. The moon gives you the material. Mercury gives you the intellectual. Venus gives you the happiness, both the pleasures of the physical and of the higher pleasures too. Mars gives you the accidents, the fires, and tribulations, so forth, that come into your life. Jupiter, the great benefic, obliterates most of those things when you come under her wing. Saturn is the priest. There you have your experiences. It takes from you, yet you will know that taking from you is growth. But experience. Uranus gives you the higher forms of influence of humanity, which is egging you on through the evolution of the species of mankind. Then comes Neptune as the hidden forces, those hidden things that are kept from the eye, but only that the inner eye can see. And here you have all these things in your lives. The mixture of them that you are standing in the middle of. Any of these things can control you and direct you. Any of those things can influence your mind and your body. But when you know that these are but influences here for the purpose of the growth of mankind. But I have reached that stage when you see that Christ has power over all things in heaven and on earth. Therefore, the Spirit of God, who is manifesting as the Christ on earth, in that Spirit there is neither time nor space. That is my self-existence. Therefore, I am not subject unto anything except unto him who created me. Therefore, I am at peace with myself and at peace with my environment. This not only does it apply to you on this plane, but applies to all who have gone before you. Take to heed this lesson. Then you will begin to understand. Right understanding of our mental world will enable us to do this defined method. So it is, in the first place, we must eliminate the idea of time and space from our actual self-existence. There is time and space in the relative, but not in the absolute. General Smuts says that time and space factor does exist. Yes, it exists in the relative world, but not in the real world of things. And as long as people will live in the relative, they can never hope to solve their problems by pure directed thought. For they always be thinking in the terms of a relative and not in the terms of reality. And this is why our politicians and statesmen fail at every turn. They fail to take the invisible factor into consideration, with the result that the blind lead the blind and they all fall in the ditch. Therefore, they are reacting to the relative. So don't you see that it's the ignorant that are leading the ignorant? One day that will pass and truth will prevail. We must establish the habit of realizing that there is a spiritual invisible world in which everything has its roots. This invisible world gives us just what we think. Everything grows into outward expression, into material expression, being merely the expression of the inward creative power which is invested in us because of the eternal unity of the universal self in the individual self, and the individual self in the universal self. Therefore it cannot be otherwise. Both are linked together eternally, and there can be no separation under any circumstances whatsoever. The spiritual prototype, being spiritual, can only be formed by the power of thought. So James Dean says, the whole universe is a mental phenomenon, and all expression in it must be of the same nature. The universal law is to produce that which is as perfect as can be done, in spite of man's ignorance of this fact. And every detail has to be worked out to give expression to this law. Therefore the law of growth has to be taken into consideration, and we cannot force this, otherwise we will undo our own work. Your success is your growth. In your success, in your growth of faith, lies in using this universal law of growth and not opposing it. The Bible says, he that believeth will not make haste. When I plant the seed in the ground, I know that it will take the season to reproduce the seed. The intelligence works upon the seed, and I understand the law of growth. that seed will grow. I expect to see it as the spring, the end of the spring comes. It's the same with this great spiritual understanding. I place the seed in that absolute. Therefore, so does the growth, that same intelligence, work upon it and bring it forth into operation. I become the active partner first, while he who knows all things becomes passive. But after I have become active, then I become passive, and then he who knows all things becomes active and reproduces. Therefore the Father does the work. Things that are seen are not made out of visible things, but out of the invisible. We can read of the prophet David, Daniel, Jesus, where through faith formed kingdoms, shut the mouths of lions, raised people from the dead. These deeds by faith have now become mere legends of religious superstition and not actual facts. They are poured forth as epitaphs without any genuine knowledge of the power of the faith that produced these things. They relegate these things to the past, 2,000 and more years ago. It has now become superstition, religious superstition. But I tell you, that same faith, that same power is now with you and me. At one time I fought with myself. I dwelt with myself to find the secret behind all this. And as I read these things that took place in the Bible as a young fellow, I was desirous to know that this was true or not true, which led me to the Himalayas, there to be taught that the word true, to find that that same power existed now, today, as it did 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. And that power in man is becoming greater because he is becoming more evolved in his nature. The spiritual nature of man is becoming more and more evident every day. Look thousands of years back and you will see mankind in his infancy. Science will take you back and show you how this particular portion of the brain, the forward portion of the brain, has grown in these thousands of years. And as this portion of the brain grows and it becomes more powerful, so does it dominate this particular portion of the brain which is animal in nature, automatically. And as the spiritual becomes greater in mankind, so that he will have power over all things in heaven and on earth. If man really realized it now, that power is with him. He agitates and brings cells into operation in his brain that have never been yet operated upon. There are cells in your brains now that have not yet started to move, but are waiting for that power to enter them to become active. The instrument created by God was a perfect instrument for his manifestation. Life created the body and the nervous system and the brain through which you could think and act through. My consciousness is not in brain or body. My consciousness is in life. My consciousness is in God. God's consciousness is in me. We are eternally linked together, never to come apart, but to grow into eternity, gaining knowledge and wisdom of all things in heaven and on earth. The infinite is the basis of the finite, or in other words, if you like, the universal is the basis of the individual. The Father and the Son are one, not separate. The fact is that the omnipresence of the omnipotent omniscience must be at any given point in time or space in which the individual thinks. When this is realized, the mighty power of faith becomes a reality. Fear not, for the Almighty is in the midst of thee. The Father and the Son are one, not separate. The fact that the omnipresence, that is the all-presence everywhere of the omnipotent omniscience, of that powerful wisdom and understanding, must be at any given point in time or space in which the individual thinks. No matter where you be, whether you be here or Timbuktu, whether you be here or the other end of the earth, the universe, that same omnipresence of the omnipotent omniscience is there. And in it you think, you act. Therefore, fear not, for the Almighty is in the midst of thee. The subject of the development of faith is of the greatest importance, and that is why I am making this series one of to be remembered. We have seen people struggling through life, up one minute, down the next. We've seen others accumulate wealth and lose their health in getting in. We seek health and spend all our wealth to find it. Some waddle through life with no purpose, while others practice asceticism, and they think by doing so they can gain the power called faith. Most of you have qualities that, if exercised, would be of great benefit to humanity. But if these are only wrapped up in dreams, what good does it do? Only a full, active life, achieving the highest that is within you, can you say you have done anything. This is the way to develop your faith, and in no way, and in no other way, can it be done. It is the activity of the individual. And without experience, without action, then your works are dead. Without faith, work is dead. And works without faith have no life. It is the active principle in man, this power behind the soul, that is working continuously to express itself, giving forth its love, wisdom, and power, radiating this tremendous force everywhere. Then you become the vehicle or the central point through which it flows. The one who can develop through faith can rule the world. This was the power of the Master, and the Master's power is still in the world. And this power can be used by all who will develop their faith. You must become master and not the slave to the influences of every emotion and thought that enters the mind. It doesn't require any training to see an object or a form, but it does require both understanding and discernment to develop the faith that moves mountains. It requires no effort to look at an object, but it both requires both understanding and discernment to develop that faith. Understanding first of all, and discernment is most necessary, Because unless you can understand your own emotions, your thoughts, and discern them, then you will have hindrances to the expression of the true faith. Thy faith hath made thee whole. What a saying. But how few recognize that truth. How few understand it. Was it not so that I told you the other night that in the mind of the woman, everything else was oblivious? There was only one powerful thought in her mind. That was, if I could only touch his garment, I would be made whole. And while hundreds surrounded him, pushing the master here and there, touching his garment and so forth, but he felt nothing. But when this woman touched his garment, he felt a force leave him. And he turned round and said, who touched me? But this woman had touched him in a certain way. That way was the avenue through which the power would flow into this person, rising up within herself, changing every atom of her body, and it became whole. If you then in your own mind can blot out everything except one thought, I and the Father are one, it becomes the most powerful affirmation you can ever make. But if it is surrounded by doubt and hindrances of your own emotional habit patterns created in your own brain, then I say you have to persevere. Persevere to discern them, these things, and understand them so that you can eliminate them. And that thought you become completely isolated in its way, isolated with no influence upon it whatsoever, standing straight and clear. I and the Father are one. Then all is possible unto you. Your faith then is that faith that moves mountains. But do not be like the woman when she read about faith that moves mountains. And as she had a house near the sea, and there was a knoll that prevented her from seeing the blue sea, she went out this night and she said, you shall be buried in the sea by tomorrow morning. And she went to bed, and when she got up, she found that the knoll was still there. And she said, I knew it would be there all the time. She never expected it to be moved into the sea, because it seemed so impossible. And that is with the majority of people today. They think that these things are impossible. And because you think they are impossible, they must be impossible to you, because whatever the consciousness is aware of, so it is unto you. As the man thinketh in his heart, so is he. There is an eternal unity between the cosmic and the individual things. When you have powerfully affirmed this unity with effective concentration, the consciousness is awake to its reality. Then you do not fight anything that seems to oppose you, for your cosmic conception gives you mastery. Nothing opposes you. The things that oppose you are of your own creation. Many think, but never act. You must both think and act with precision, for there is a law that you comprehend. That is, that we are continually attracting to ourselves forces and conditions most akin to our thought. This law is continually operating whether we are conscious of it or not. Hate attracts hate, love attracts love. If you discern what you are thinking. Then you can dissolve that which destroys you, and you can hold that which builds. We live in a mental substance in which there are all kinds of thought waves continually operating. Thoughts of the angelic world surround us as well as thoughts of the misguided and ignorant. We tune into these according to the attitude of mind we hold towards others and conditions. Let us take a look at the ordinary mind and the atmosphere that surrounds it. A mind that is filled with anxiety, fear, greed, envy, hate, jealousy, selfishness. How easy it is for such a person to succumb to these influences, if the mind is in that way inclined. How can faith be developed in such a mind? How can the master power be developed when these conditions exist? Don't you see that these are the hindrances to your faith? It's discerning these things that is most important. To know them for what they are. When you react to things external to yourselves, you have this emotional reaction. These emotional reactions cause what we call a habit pattern to be created in your brain. The mind first sees these things, then is transferred to the brain. Then the feeling you have is formed in the cerebellum and interferes with the smooth running of your organism. As I told you the other night, this occupational anxiety is one of the most deadly things we've got to deal with, because it causes more trouble than anything else. And if we can grasp this truth, we'll begin to understand that there is a peace that comes into you through divine reasoning. And these other things will pass away. Because it is natural for the infinite or universal life to give expression to itself, having no conditions. Nothing is imposed upon it. We alone put it in a cage. We impose conditions upon it. But we will see that we ourselves are those who condition life. But if I say I and the Father are one, it gives me freedom. It gives me peace. I recognize that under no circumstances can he be conditioned. He must be free. I've said to you before that you cannot be a loving person if you love one and hate another. Nor can you say you're a kind person if you're kind to one and unkind to another. True faith is developed only in the mind that is cleansed of these opposites. Let the mind that was in Jesus Christ be in you. We are told that this would give us power over all things in heaven and on earth. This is not very difficult to do when we begin to discern what we are thinking, saying, and doing. Can you look into your mind and say that your mind is like that of Jesus? Yet it can be like his, for he said, in other words, that we could repeat his performance if we would understand him. What I want to show you in this lesson is that it is much more than just believing. The mind must be cleansed of the rubbish that hinders the development of your true faith. And if you can see what hinders this development, you are well on the way to mastery. So it's not believing. A belief is nothing. Because a belief is nothing more than an idea in your mind. And that idea is opposed by other forces, other ideas, which counteract it and very often obliterate it. Your beliefs are always changing. They're never stable, because one idea overcomes another. But the truth never changes. And when we cleanse the mind of all the things that hinder the true expression of that which always is, waiting patiently to give expression to itself, when we begin to discern that which hinders that expression, we dissolve it away. We know that there's electricity. No one has ever seen it. No one knows what it is. But if that light does not function, there is something hindering the electricity. Therefore we set about discerning the cause, why it is not functioning, why the life is not flowing. And when we discern the cause, we remove it. And the electricity begins to flow once more. It is the same with you. It is the same with everyone. But the first thing you have to do is discern that which hinders, not an ordinary belief. Some say that they want a more practical demonstration of this fact. Others may say that it is pure imagination. But the fact that the law remains adamant, that as you sow, so shall you reap, will furnish the answer to both. The law of the cosmic is that as you give to the cosmic, so the cosmic will give to you. The more you recognize the cosmic, the more the cosmic will recognize you. O Israel, the Lord thy God is one Lord. Love him with all thy mind, with all thy heart, with all thy strength, and love thy neighbor as thyself. If you can do that, then the cosmic will give you everything, because that is the cosmic law. The cosmic is built on love, beauty, strength, generosity, clemency, forbearance, loftiness, unselfishness, simplicity, forgiveness, and all that is noble in mankind. How true is it that to sow an act reaps a habit, and to sow a habit reaps a character, to sow a character reaps a destiny? This is the procedure that enables us to lay the foundation upon which we can develop our faith. All must learn to act in love no matter what conditions exist around you. For habit is a powerful influence, and most of you know this. How difficult it is for one who loves scandal not to listen to it. How difficult it is for one who smokes excessively to put it aside. How difficult is one who creates a habit to drop that habit. Habit is a powerful influence in your life. And that is why your emotional habit patterns become expressed upon your body in the form of various things, such as duodenal ulcers, such as nerve pains, pains in the stomach, heartbeat, headaches. With all sorts of these things we cannot picture the cause of your emotional habit patterns. But these can be easily broken up by discerning the cause and by divine reasoning, relaxing ourselves and tuning into the great Almighty that is in the midst of thee. Therefore all things turn to good, to experiences you profit by. Therefore do not grumble about the past experiences and think you have been hard dealt by. If you can discern the cause of your trouble and eliminate it, you are greater than you have ever been before. Wonderful truth is this, that these things are your stepping stones and not your stumbling blocks when you discern them. But unless you discern them, you become your stumbling blocks and continue to be stumbling blocks. But when they are discerned and understood, then they become stepping stones to greater progress. It is when the act is repeated that the habit is formed. If we know of the qualities that are lacking and feel that they are impossible to attain, then our belief is our hindrance. But on the other hand, our realization of oneness gives us the strength of the cosmic to charge us with that which is cosmic in nature, and thus develop our faith. The faith that makes you whole, the faith that moves mountains. Proper understanding and acting with perseverance and earnestness will surely give you the most desirable characteristics. Repeat the process of habit in the true direction, and as sure as the sun rises in the morning, you will have these characteristics. What is this habit then you must follow? Relax yourself, quiet and peaceful. Take all stress and strain away from the mind and body. Then through divine reasoning, you acquire an understanding. And as you begin to discern the things that have hindered your progress, they begin to break up, solve away, because you can see they are of your own creation. Like the tree of knowledge of good and evil exists in man's mind only. It has its growth there, it has its roots there. The tree of life has its roots in God. It is eternal in nature. Take hold of this tree and let it be the spring of living water, rising up to eternal life. To develop true faith, we must feel the true meaning of faith and not only think it. We must see and feel the action of faith. The greatest help to the development is equality. Position, wealth, creeds, or dogmas must not blind you or mar the view. To see that there can be no separation in the life, in one and in another, gives you confidence in yourself. All this division in society is a hindrance to the growth of your faith. All these divisions in your particular forms and cliques, clubs, races, is a hindrance to your development of faith. No one can have true faith unless they can see the life and understand that the life behind all is the same life in themselves. Therefore you get behind all things, behind the relative, into the creative principle. There is your faith. But if you are hindered by ideas of society, of groups, of cliques, races, and people, differences in this and differences in that, then you have no true faith. You cannot have it, because that faith must be registered in that eternal quality of equality, of that eternal principle of life existing in every living soul. That is the true life, the true understanding of greatness, strength, and power in all humanity. That is the power that will lead men in the future into the great truth of the oneness of all life, where peace and plenty, the lion and the lamb shall lie down together. And then the greatness of that life will manifest in itself. true manifestation of the Christ in each and every one, shall become evident in a permanent expression in the human soul. If there is a tendency towards retreat, strengthen your foundation by your understanding that you are cosmic in nature. The cosmic forces are all with you always, as long as you believe in God alone and in yourself, being one with Him. Then you shall be free. I and the Father are one. Let the faith of the Master be in you. Then His light, His love, His power, His wholeness, His beauty, and abundance will shine forth in you. I have glorified thy name on earth. In other words, I have shown what thou art to all men, for we are one. For the Father, who has life in Himself, has granted the Son to have life in Himself. Benediction. O glorious one, teach me to gather the nectar from the flowers that bloom in the garden of human souls, so that I may produce the honey of thy delight. I shall store thy love and forgiveness in my heart, so that the fragrance of thy beauty shall shine from me. And when winter comes with its cold blasts, I shall be covered with thy blanket of peace and love. Even though earthly separation dance around, may my feet follow in the footprints of thy beloved one who trod the earth before me, so that I may also say, Father, I have shown what thou art to all men, and hear thy voice say deep in my soul, Well done, good and faithful servant. Thou hast proved my faith in thee.